Hi, my name is Timothy Nguyen, and my hot topic presentation is going to be on the epidemic of depression. The three main things I'll be tackling today is what is depression, fighting depression, and can we win? First of all, what is depression? The official definition of depression is a mental health disorder characterized by the persistently depressed mood or loss of interest in activities causing significant impairment in daily life. Why is this so important? According to the ADAA, major depressive disorder affects about 16.1 million US adults between the age of 15 and 45, and 3.3 million US adults suffer from persistent depressive disorder. This issue is so important because, as of right now, uh, depression and other mental health disorders were not really seen as a problematic issue or real until the most recent decade. So many Americans, especially the up and coming adults, are being affected by such a debilitating mental disorder, and no one's really talking about it. Unlike other diseases, where it can have such an obvious impact on friends and family, most people who have depression never really tell their loved ones and often suffer alone. It is an invisible disease. As someone who has suffered, who has, as someone who suffers from depression, I can also admit that it took me a very long time to come out and tell my parents and friends that I have depression because I always felt like I was alone. I guess the saying that I feel like I'm alone even if I'm in a room full of people um, best describes how I feel and how most people with depression feel. It's such an accurate statement because no matter where you are, no matter what you do, it's always there, and sometimes you can't really shake it off. Is it getting any better? Well, kind of. According to the World Health Organization, there has been an 18.4% increase of depression globally from 2005 to 2015. Why? Well, part of the problem is medication. Antidepressants aren't really, well, antidepressants. There hasn't been really a good way to treat depression through medication. As someone who's gone through pharmacies or going through pharmacy school and works as a pharmacy technician, I know that antidepressants often cause more harm than good. For example, Prozac, a popular antidepressant, has shown to cause an increase in suicidality before it treats depression. It actually comes with a black box label that says this product or this medication can increase the likelihood of suicide. This is because, as a depressed person who has suicidal thoughts, one of the main things that prevent a person from taking their own life is the lack of motivation to do so, ironically, from that depression. But Prozac actually has a time period where it helps with the motivational issues before it helps the depressional issues. So there is a small time period where people who take Prozac actually have an increased chance of committing suicide. This is an actual big problem. There are many other medications in the category of SSRIs or antidepressants that cause a wide variety um, of symptoms and death, in many cases death, that as Western medicine hasn't really been able to solve yet. Another issue: no new blood. Another issue is the lack of the younger generation going into psychology or psychiatry. 10 plus years ago, depression was not recognized by the public as a major medical/mental issue. During that time, psychologists were mainly trained for PTSD and addiction. But in the past decade, mental health has been recognized as a major pandemic and has affected millions of Americans. This has caused awareness to be spiked and raised, but unfortunately, there are not enough relevant psychologists in the field that can properly help the new wave of depression. According to Dr. Alok Kanojai, or I know him as Dr. K from watching him on YouTube, of Harvard medical staff, the majority of psychologists and psychiatrists are not right now are above the age of 50. This is a huge disparity in the age gap, causing a lack of connection and effectiveness in treatment. And I quote from him, depression is not the same as depression was before. How can you expect a boomer, he's referring to the older generation, to understand what you're going through when they have no idea what's happening outside their own living room? The answer is they can't. And all jokes aside, I know that psychologists today are doing their best to try to help as many patients going through issues as possible, but you can't deny the fact that because there's such a large age gap that there will be some disconnect, and that's why a lot of people who have depression like me kind of refuse refuse to see a psychologist sometimes, because sometimes they just don't understand what it's like. Oops. The reason this needs to be addressed as soon as possible is because from 2000 to 2016, the CDC figures that the suicide rates for Americans have increased from 11.29% to 15.7% in white Americans, and 5.52% to 6.03% in African Americans. This sharp increase of suicide coincides with the increase of cases of depression throughout America. If we don't find a safe and effective way to fight this, suicide rates will only increase. Depression will always increase, and it'll just be a continual spiral downwards. How can we fight it? Well, first, raising awareness. Even though recently there have been a lot of awareness being raised about depression and suicide, it's not enough. It's still being swept under the rug, and sometimes people forget about it until a celebrity dies. This is not something that we can just forget for the time being. Next thing we can do is encourage the younger generation to go into psychology or psychiatry. The more people we have that go into these fields, the more opportunity we can have to help the younger generation fight through their own personal battles, and hopefully we can decrease the rate of suicide. On a personal level, reach out to friends that you might think have depression. As someone who suffers from depression, I can't stress how much a pat on the back helps, or that random message that sometimes, may catch me off guard, but will help me remember that I do have friends and someone that I can lean on. Depression hotlines. There are many, many organizations out there and hotlines that you can reach for people that you might think have depression. We think we're fighting alone, but don't let us fight alone. Finally, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. This is really important, and I hope no one ever has to use this, but here's the number: 1-800-273-8255. The end.